Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Lawrence, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tonya. This one really has me excited because it's someone who's very special to me. To be exact, it's my best friend. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about her background, and you will see why she is one of our first guests. She is a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. She has a background and like when I say best friend, I mean like bestest of best friends. If I'm Oprah, she's Gail, okay? Or she might say backwards. One of us got some money, both of us got some money. If I got money, she got money, whatever. Best friend since college. So I am really excited to have her here. And we're going to talk about something that is important, but not talked about enough. And we're talking about today domestic violence and what it means to all of us, not just the people who are involved in these situations, but everyone in that circle, everyone that cares about someone who's in a situation, everyone who's related to someone who's a batterer has a role in the scenario of domestic violence. And coming up on this holiday season, it's a time where it's something that we definitely should talk about, and we'll share a little bit about why. So this is LaTisha Carter. She is a master life coach, an advocate, a behavioral health consultant, a mental health ambassador. If I stopped right there, that would tell you she's the bomb, just all the way. She has experience with domestic violence both personally and professionally. She's been in the field for over 18 years. She has experience working in the court system personally and professionally. So when she's talking, you will understand that she has a breadth of experience. So no matter what avenue or what aspect of domestic violence, she's not someone that just had a job that worked for someone and this is what she did 9 to 5. She understands every gamut of it. She has been on various boards that help implement how things are done across the entire state of Maryland. So when I tell you she's there, hands on, day in, day out, trying to make a difference, I'm just really proud of her because she has not only, the practical or the theoretical knowledge from college, but hands-on experience, which makes a difference in the real world when you're talking about how to move through things, how to make things better. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the visionary leader of My Covenant Place, Miss LaTisha Carter. Hello, LaTisha.
Hello, hello, hello.
Well, I am sorry, but I'm going to call you Tish because that's what I do. And we're going to get this a little bit less formal so that we can talk to our sister friends out here all over the world who may be in their own situation, who may know someone who's in a situation, or may just be curious. Something happened in their neighborhood, something happened at work. I know about an incident where, people were walking down the street and they witnessed violence right in front of them, and people continue to walk and just bypass the situation. And no matter what you did, whether you play a part in helping a person or you just walk by and witness it, it impacts you, right? It's something that you take with you, you carry with you. And so I think it's really worthy of conversation and for people to have nuggets, takeaways, different things that you can bring to the table and share with people based on your experience, your knowledge, your background. So let's start with this. Tell people what you do.
So, I am the visionary leader of My Covenant Place. It's a comprehensive victim service agency here in Maryland. And as Tanya mentioned, I've been in the field for nearly 18 years, having worked with both domestic violence victims as well as domestic violence offenders. That experience and that training is something that I kind of tiptoed into. However, I can tell you for certain that it has given me a broader perspective of domestic violence, and not just from the victim's standpoint, but also from the batterer standpoint, and allows us to appropriately address and appropriately intervene and treat both domestic violence victims as well as the abusers.
That's big because most times you only hear about when people are talking about on a national scale domestic violence, they're talking about the victims. They're not talking about correcting the behavior of the abuser. How important do you think that is?
That is extremely important. There is no one side to a quarter, correct?
Right, right.
And so when you're talking about domestic violence, there's just no one side of it. The reason that we treat and intervene with regards to the batters is because in order for you can't just deal with one side of the pendulum. The
Mhm.
batters are the people, the abusers are the people, the very people that create victims. And so when you leave that out, when you leave the intervention, when you leave the educational piece in dealing with the abusers, you essentially create more victims. And I think that that's something that a
Mm.
lot of people in the field need to adhere to, need to give a lot more attention to as we move forward and continue to try to eradicate domestic violence.
Okay, I feel that. I receive that. Yes. So, we were in college together. We were both majoring in criminal justice. What made you decide to switch gears? I switched gears, you switched gears. What made you decide to switch gears and continue along the path of domestic violence and working specifically in that field?
Oh, wow. To be very clear, this is not what I thought my path would be.
Mm.
Um, our major was criminal justice for our undergrad studies. And so I can remember even as far back as high school, and they asked you what your future aspirations are. And I can remember telling them that I was going to work for the FBI or the CIA in Quantico, Virginia. And so that was
Yes.
the path that I had initially taken. And once we started our undergraduate studies in criminal justice, I shifted and then I thought that I was going to be a criminal defense attorney. We were able to look at some of the research, we were able to look at some of the literature as well as the statistics behind African Americans. African Americans that interface with the criminal justice system, African Americans that interface with the Child Protective Services Department within various states. And we were able to look at how the disproportionate number of African Americans are involved or interface with the criminal justice system. And so I wanted to change that. And I thought that I was going to be a criminal defense attorney. I thought that I was going to go out there, kick butts, change the system, change people's lives. And God had a way of throwing a detour. And so I've been working in the human services ever since my personal interaction with domestic violence.
Wow. And um, many things happen. You talked about God. Many things happen when God puts an obstacle in place that only makes you stronger. And that obstacle gave you the wherewithal and the understanding to be empathetic to the plight of women in domestic violence, as well as a desire to learn more so that you can help the offenders. So he has a plan. He figured it out. He knows better than we do. I thought I was going to be a detective, and then I saw our our last
Congratulations.
semester. Yeah, the last semester was a class, and they started talking about you need to be a cop first. I was like, wait, wait, wait. I just wanted to wear a cute leather jacket and some jeans and walk around and figure stuff out because that's what I do. I figure stuff out. Well, we figure stuff out. We both detectives in our own right, and found out very quickly that that I didn't want to chase anyone with a gun. I didn't want anyone chasing me with a gun. So that was a wrap. Moved on to something different. So yeah, your personal experience and being able to take something that was obviously traumatic for you and turn it into good is something that should be commended on so many levels. So thank you for all the victims that you help, for all the offenders that you help see the light. Thank you for taking your own personal pain and turning it into your passion. I'll say that right now. So here we are. We're right before the holidays. Why is it that domestic violence increases significantly during the holidays?
And so there's no empirical data that we have at present that says that, and we have to be careful with how we present that says that the holidays is a definitive reason as to why, or root cause as to why. Domestic violence, let me say that the holidays absolutely exacerbates the
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence occurrence. It's a driver for the domestic violence occurrence. And so when we look at it and we frame it in that aspect, there are a lot of different factors that come into play with regards to being a driver. One is a lot of stress that comes up around the holidays. There are financial worries that come up around the holidays. There are optics, family optics that come into
Mm-hmm.
play around the holiday, and be exposed to extended family. Those are some of the various things that play into why we do see some of the domestic violence numbers spike around the holiday time.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So let's say you are silently suffering. I was one of those people who silently suffered with domestic violence. What would you recommend to a female who is silently suffering with domestic violence?
That you don't have to. You do not have to suffer in silence. There are so many agencies. There are so many people. There are so many different wheels to this picture that you don't have to go through the process alone. Now, that varies from person to person. You have some individuals that experience domestic violence, and they're fortunate enough to leave after the first occurrence of domestic violence. And I commend those people that have that type of foresight and have that type of strength to be able to get out of the situation. However, most domestic violence victims experience domestic violence on average of 5 to 7 times before they leave. And
Mm-hmm.
so 5 to 7 times could look very different for each victim. You may have some people who reach out on the first, second, and or third time. And because they had vowed that they would leave their domestic violence situation and have not, and have in fact gone back to that situation, live in shame and can live in
Mm.
fear, because the people that they told, or the people that they vowed that they were leaving the situation, they actually have gone back. And so that is actually some of the reasons that keep domestic violence victims in their current violent, abusive relationships.
Wow. So yeah, that's a big one because now you're bringing other people into the fold who may have their own feelings about it. Um, they may be afraid for you. They may be hurt. They may want to defend you in any way that they can, financially, physically. So you now have other people that are involved, and you made this commitment that you're going to protect yourself and protect their interests and move away so you don't. And now you're ashamed, and that is something that I didn't even contemplate because you only know what you know. So there are people who deal with so many different aspects of domestic violence. And there's so many people, not just the victim, like I said, the offender, but they're also the surrounding and supporting environment. It could be co-workers, it could be family members. Um, there's so many people. And so when, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me offer this.
Uh-huh.
A lot of victims that are in their situations don't necessarily vow that they're going to leave as well. That's the flip side
Mm-hmm.
of things. And that's for various reasons. They could believe that the abuse was warranted and that they've done something wrong, and that they contributed to the abuser being upset with them, or they contributed to the physical altercation that occurred. And so they internalize that and say, like, hey, if I stop doing this, or if I could do this better, maybe that wouldn't motivate, or maybe that wouldn't trigger the abuser to abuse me. Many times victims continue to stay in their relationship without the vow to leave because that's what was modeled to them. That is what they see. That is what they know as love. And they believe that situations of that magnitude are healthy. And that is very normal. You have other people that are victims that say, for financial reasons, maybe the abuser is the breadwinner, and maybe they have no workplace skills to be able to offer, or so they believe, so that they're able to better support themselves and move forward in their journey of becoming a survivor of domestic violence. You have individuals that believe that they don't want to break their family up. They have children. Their children loves the abuser. They, at times, love the abuser. The relationship, the situation was not always violent. It was not always toxic. And so they go back to the place of nostalgia when their relationship was great and their relationship was fine. And that's what they want. They want the abuser to be loving. They want the abuser to be kind. And so I just want to be able to give you the flip side of where each victim may lie, why they lie there, what are some of those factors that contribute to their thought process as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, oh, I want people to walk away feeling inspired, because when you're a family member who's dealing with a loved one being hurt, that is hurtful. When you are a victim who's dealing with being abused, that's traumatic. How do we create a place of less hopelessness for people so that they do start to eventually address and move forward to a place where they can find some help? What do you recommend as maybe some small incremental steps for people to feel less hopeless in their current situations?
I think it's important to note before I move to that a lot of us, and I'm sure you're able to finish this sentence, a lot of us have been taught from childhood that what goes on in our homes, finish
Stays
my
in our
sentence,
home. Stays in our
absolutely,
home.
absolutely. And so, we're dealing with a culture of individuals that have really rooted themselves in that. And so to be able to reach out to someone, and even the flip side of that, if I could digress for a moment, is, as you mentioned earlier, that we mind our business. We're taught to also mind our business. Mind what's going on in your home. Maintain what you have going on in your family. And so we have the two side by side. What goes on in my house stays in my house. And oh, yeah, I see some things, but I need to mind my business and mind what's going on in my home. And so that could be a double indignity for victims who perceive their situation as to not be burdensome on someone else, to not be burdensome on societal issues that are directly affected or directly linked or correlated to domestic violence. And so when we send the message that there's help out here and help exists for domestic violence victims, we have to be sensitive around that delivery. We have to be sensitive and mindful that these are people that are dealing with very active traumas. We have to be sensitive and mindful about the strength that it may take for someone to leave, the strength that it even takes for a victim to verbalize that they are a victim of domestic violence. Many times we have people that don't necessarily identify with being a victim of domestic violence because it looks a certain way in society, right? And so if my abuser and I are fighting, and while I have a busted lip, I am normalizing that behavior because he also has a black eye. So he's not just beating on me. We fight each other. And that's a different typology when we talk about domestic violence. And I won't convolute things and get all into that, but it's about our approach. It's about our level of empathy, and it's about our level of information and wrapping resources around victims that give them a greater and higher success rate of leaving within that window, that 5 to 7 time window of a victim experiencing domestic violence.
Yeah. So, man, there are so many levels to it, things that I had not contemplated. And I know I followed your career. I go to your conferences biannually, and still I continue to learn. Yes, I continue to learn so much because there are people in need. And I, for one, don't like to see people suffer. And I think that that's the same for you because you created a whole company, a whole nonprofit around changing and evolving people's lives and their health, their lives completely, because just the everyday aspect as well as someone's livelihood can be at stake dealing with domestic violence. So let me ask you this. You've got this wonderful nonprofit that's doing so much, and I commend you for that. Again, kudos to you. It is hard work when your everyday method of moving forward in life is changing lives. That takes a lot of work because you intake a lot of information from other people. You have to digest that. You have to be able to leave it sometimes at the office and it doesn't get left there always, and then go and be who you need to be for your family. So I know that takes a lot. We commend you for that. But knowing what you know now, if you went back to the young lady that was in college, what would you tell that young lady who is thinking about her purpose in life and how she gets there faster? What would you tell her, knowing what you know now?
Well, first, let me publicly and openly thank my board of directors at My Covenant Place. This is not a one-woman show. I have an excellent board of directors that have helped to visualize, has helped us to expand, that has helped us to solidify ourselves in this victim services movement. And so you are one of them. And so thank you. I want to publicly thank you for helping us to get ourselves together, helping us to really root ourselves and make an impact amongst thousands of clients' lives. And so when I think about the young woman that I was in my early 20s. I was getting to know who I was and what I wanted to be. And I was a young mother at that time. I was in college. I was working. I was juggling a lot. And what made my situation unique at that time is because it was a very, very public case that I was going through in Pennsylvania. It was a precedent case. It was a precedent case in the county in which we lived, and the district attorney's office was aggressively prosecuting my case. I can remember there being many newspaper articles about it. It was on a few talk shows. And so it wasn't something that I was just going through in my home. It had expanded outside of my home. And so there were a lot of different things that were at play at that time. If there were anything that I would be able to say to my younger self, is to breathe, is to ground yourself, and is to know definitively that this is going to create what you will do, how you will be fulfilled, and how you will take care of yourself, your family, other people that will come in to work under you, and how you will impact a community, a generation, and you will be able to leave a legacy. Now, would I have heard all of that at that time? I don't know. I don't
Were we
know.
listening? Were we listening?
No. No.
We were having fun though.
After the fact, I had fun.
Yeah, yeah.
I can remember going through a lot of trauma at that time. I can remember I started to have panic attacks at that time. I was crying myself to sleep. I was dealing with external optics about what people perceived me to be or who I was or what was happening, especially considering that I was popular, very much so popular where I was from. Um, but if I had to really hone in, I think those things, continually reminding myself of those things, would have eventually fortified me much sooner. And I would have arrived much sooner than where I'm currently, not where I'm currently at, because I've got there, but I think that it would have helped facilitate the process, a smoother process for me while I was en route.
Fantastic. Well, that was our Teach Grow Teach segment. And I think that people of all ages, Teach Grow Teach, people of all ages can take that information to just breathe. Take a moment to figure out what it is that you need to do going forward and how it's going to impact yourself, your family, your livelihood, and everyone that you
Your
will impact.
community.
Yeah, and we will leave a legacy based on the good works that you do. So again, thank you, LaTisha Carter, for joining us and keep
Thank you
continuing
for
to do great
having
things.
me.
Yes, keep continuing to do great things and helping people around you. Everyone, we have an opportunity to help the people who are not just in our immediate circle, but people who are around us. Find out about your local domestic violence chapter, anything that you can
Absolutely.
do to
Absolutely.
support products that you can donate. Feminine hygiene products are important, clothing, anything, because people, when they decide to make that decision to move forward, sometimes they move into a shelter with nothing. So do anything that you can. It's a time of giving.
Leave, leave and lend an ear, a non-judgmental
Yeah, oh
ear.
yeah.
That is what domestic violence, and I'm going to start to call them survivors.
Hmm.
Domestic violence thrivers need someone who is compassionate, someone who is empathetic, and someone who will listen and be there without judgment. It is a process. It can and may take 5 to 7 times, but I'm going to say if there's anything that you can offer, offer an ear.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, LaTisha. We'll see you next time on Tuesdays with Tonya.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely.